Welcome to Mrs. Mummypenny Talks, and I am delighted to have another episode. I think this is going to be episode 35, yes, because I'm going to publish this next week. I have another guest, get my hands going the right way. I am going to be interviewing people every week on my podcast now, because I've decided you've had more than enough of me doing the monologue conversation, of me just talking to my audience. So I want to get some other people onto the show. And it's going to be a really interesting variety of people, but people who run businesses, be that a large organisation or a small organisation. And I want to get a really good balance of men and women. I want different races. I want gay people, straight people. I want to cover everything. So that's my intention with Mrs. Mummypenny Talks from this point forward. So I welcome Tom, who is the founder and CEO of Lifesearch, which is a big company.
Sort of a big company. I'm afraid Tom is a bit pale, stale and male, but you've got to start somewhere, I suppose.
I know, yeah. I've started with a white man, but there we go. Next week, I'm interviewing a wonderful lady who has set up a business where she's created oracle cards just to give daily guidance. It's just the most incredible business, and the oracle cards are on their way to me. I think they're at the post office now. So it's very random, the people I'll be interviewing, but I just go with it. So yeah, tell us a bit about you, and what I'd tell us who you are, and I'd also really love you to share your story. So I know we've already touched on it before we started recording, but yeah, sort of from the beginning and how you ended up running Lifesearch.
Well, okay. How long you got? I'll try and be crisp. So I'm Tom Baigrie, and I came to England in 1981, having lived my youth in Cape Town in South Africa, which was a lovely place for a small white boy to grow up, but was a very ugly country indeed in those times. And very pertinent now. But I left there as soon as I could after school and came here. Couldn't get a job because I really didn't have any qualifications worthy of anything. So, but I did manage to get a job selling insurance, life insurance in London. And I suppose the immigrant story is simply that now my business, Lifesearch, arranges more policies of life insurance and disability insurance than any other in Britain. So that's the story in a nutshell. It started off, as I say, as an insurance sales job at an insurance company, and then morphed into what was called a broker in those days, which really meant a financial advisor of some sort. It was all a bit blurry in the 80s. And then
wasn't it?
regulation arrived, and we became officially an independent financial advisor, and then a wealth manager, and then a financial planning firm. If ever you need advice as to your wealth and you have a bit of wealth, financial planning is where you should go. I can say that objectively because I sold that firm in 2016, because I had become, totally enamored by the business that I now run, the only business I now run, Lifesearch, which started back in 1998. And its purpose was to basically stop the banks from ripping off customers when they bought term life assurance. Back in the late 90s, the protection market, as it's now called, it wasn't called that until we started calling it that in the noughties, but the protection market, i.e. life and disability and critical illness insurance, was really a sales-driven, entirely sales-driven place.
Yeah, commission-based.
Yeah, pretty abhorrent, really. Anyway, that's mostly changed, not all. There's still some corners of our industry that shouldn't exist, but for the most part, there's lots of good practice, and the place is much better. And we've played a pretty full part in making it that way, as we've grown at Lifesearch from obviously just me on day one through to about 500 of us.
500, gosh.
The wider family, as we sometimes call ourselves. So that's a bit of a cliche, isn't it?
I love on the so I work closely with Lifesearch as you are, how do I put it in a good way? So I only work with one client in an industry pillar, because I fully believe that if I'm going to talk about a product or a service, I need to use it. I need to be a customer. So I am a customer of Lifesearch. We can go on to that. My life insurance policy is, let's say, stuck at the doctor's at the moment, but it's progressing. Yeah, so Lifesearch is the company I recommend to my readers, of which I have about 50,000 of them. So I've tried and tested the product and the service, and it's a great service. It feels, and all the emails I get from the various people at Lifesearch, I love that it says part of the family since 2007, or everybody puts how long they've worked for the company.
Yeah, the word family in business is obviously way overdone, or it always seems that way to me. But the truth is, my wife plays a very active part in the business, as part of our care team, really, for when people get down. She's been very busy through lockdown. It's been a tough time for lots of people. So she plays a very active role there, and well, I'm the founder and the CEO, and I'll have to quit at some point, I guess. But for now, so it does feel a bit like a family. And yeah, we have a culture which is, well, fundamentally about caring for our people, caring for our customers. Again, every time I say these, I think, oh, everyone listening is just going to think it's corporate bullshit, but it just isn't. It's what I think is the right way to run a business, and I've been trying to do that for 39 years, I'm afraid. Yeah, that's what keeps people in the business. They love it, and we love them.
Yeah, it's a really important, and this is where I start meandering off, but it's a really important point you raise about your staff, because I've got this like 5-point checklist when I consider companies to work with, right? And this sounds very corporate because I've got a corporate background. So I worked for HSBC, in the late 90s. I was part of that. That's where I became an accountant. Then I worked for Tesco, so went to a massive, it was challenging. I was going to swear then. Working for Tesco's was really, really hard.
Swearing's okay. I'm afraid I swear all the time. We all do it in real life, so
yeah.
I'm not sure everybody does, but apologies if we offend. But anyway, yes, no, carry on.
Yeah, it was really tough. It was really tough. But yeah, it's I forgot what my point was now. I was meandering off. But sorry, my 5-point checklist. So companies that I work with now I run my own business. I call the shots, right? I don't work for anybody. I work for myself. So the companies I work with, it's really important that they look after their staff, because if a company looks after their staff, I know their customer service is going to be good. So there's 2 things. The company has to be financially stable. Number 3, I turned down a lot of work with, like when I heard Toys R Us were going under, they offered me a job, and it was a high paid job, and it was relevant. I've got children, but I said no because I knew they were going under, and they did go under 2 months later. And my other things are, companies have to have a good like environmental sort of strategy and policies. And finally, the last one is, I like to meet people like yourself that run the companies, just to check that our ethics and our ethos are the same. And there's that 5-point checklist, and it is very corporate, but it works really well for me because it also feels authentic and genuine, even though it's quite structured and corporate as well. So
yes, you've got to have structure, you've got to have discipline in an approach, and yeah, so that's just a tool you use, but it's Well, it's clear you get to the right kind of businesses, which is is vital. Seeing you're telling all your 50,000 readers what to do fundamentally, or at least encouraging them to do the right thing.
I'm guiding them,
Influencing them. Absolutely, you are. Absolutely, you are.
Yeah. So let's have a bit of a chat about insurance, right? Because people might be watching this and thinking, oh, why is Lynn talking about insurance? It's the most boring subject in the world. But I'll do a little bit of a personal story of why life insurance is really important to me. So my mum died when I was 16, and then my dad died when I was 19.
Oof.
Now, obviously, very traumatic events. They both had heart attacks as well, so I'm quite at risk of heart attacks, and I'm 43. So at the first opportunity I possibly could, I bought a house when I was 23, and at that point, that's when I took out my first life insurance policy, because I had this huge responsibility of the mortgage, the outstanding mortgage, and my parents had died like a few years before. So it was incredibly important to have life insurance. And my mum, she didn't have any life insurance. She didn't even have a will. So everything just sort of went over to my dad. And then this sounds like it's an incredible story of my life, but my dad went and got remarried, and he then died without a will again.
Yeah.
And my stepmother inherited everything.
Of course. Oh, the laws of intestacy, terrible things.
Yeah. So it's really important to have life insurance, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, have life insurance and put it in trust. And have a will.
Yeah.
You can get a will online in minutes for not very much.
It's 90 quid to set up a will with Beyond.life is a company who I do my will through. It's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah. So so get a will, but also when you buy life insurance, you should put it in trust.
Yeah. Explain what that means.
Yeah, trust is simply a mechanism where you nominate who you want to get the money. So you could nominate your children, you could nominate your ex.
No way.
Yes. As I said that, I thought probably don't go there, Tom. But nominate whoever you want, and that money. The moment the insurance company agrees that you died, agrees the claim, then they will pay out directly to them without having to wait for a will, which has to get granted probate, which can take a while, and certainly without having to wait for the laws of intestacy to apply. It's a government department, I've forgotten the name, who deal with all of this and who, route the money to stepmothers as opposed to children, which is seldom the original intention, I think. But anyway,
Who knows?
So
So it's just a hugely important thing to have. And I find so as I mentioned, I'm in the middle. So I've recently just got divorced, and the whole world knows I'm very happy about it. And I've just had my decree absolute through.
Yes. Congratulations.
Legally divorced. And obviously that once that comes through, it triggers a lot of financial changes I need to make. So my will needs to be rewritten. He was never in my will anyway. All my life insurance trusts need to be sorted out, because I've got 3 different policies. But the 2 policies I had originally, one was connected to the mortgage I took out when I was 23.
Yeah.
I've got another one which was connected to a mortgage I took out in 2009.
Okay.
And they're those life insurance policies are what's the right word to use? They're term linked. So they were only ever for 25 years.
Well, so they should be. Yeah, they should be for the lifetime of the debt, really. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the newest one I'm in the process of getting, which is what Otis has been sorting out for me, who's one of your family members. It's basically I've had to take on, I had to buy out my ex-husband, so I've had to give him some money, and more money's gone onto my mortgage, so I've had to take out an additional life insurance policy to cover the extra 100 grand.
Right.
But it's stuck in the system because I have again, I've talked about this on my blog, so it's fine. I've got a very innocent blood disorder called ITP, which means I have low platelets.
Right.
And Legal and General, who's the insurance policy that has been recommended to me, they've said, we need a letter from the doctor to say that you're actually okay. So, and because of Corona,
Doctor's
it's
not open
stuck.
yet. No. No. That's all coming good now. Obviously, doctor surgeries are back at full tilt pretty much, or getting back there anyway, and medical appointments and things like that are now all being made by insurers again as of next week. So I guess I just must have made the decision to just stick with that for a few days in order to see it through, rather than trying to jump insurers and start the process elsewhere and try and avoid that. Quite often that's what you have to do with customers who have health issues of any sort. You've got to find the right insurer for them.
Yeah.
And I would guess in this case it looked so innocent. Otis just went for the best value, and then whoops, IPT is a bit more serious to Legal and General than you thought it would be, or he thought it would be. So yeah, then we have to either go into what we call a rebroke phase, where we try and find an insurer who won't ask so many questions or will behave better in our way of speaking, or just decide to stick it out. And quite often it's best just to stick it out, go through the process, and get someone covered as quickly as you can, particularly given the COVID situation.
Yeah. So I'm nearly there. I keep prodding the doctor's surgery as well.
That's the hard part for us, is you don't want to bother them too much, but you do want to get the job done.
Yes.
So there are all sorts of moves afoot to start doing that more electronically and digitally and so on. But NHS GPs are a complex tribe to get to adopt new systems. That's for sure.
Absolutely. But it's while we're talking about health issues, just I suppose to reassure people listening and watching. Well, you'll, I don't know the stats on this, but you will. Like how many policies just sort of go straight through and are accepted without?
Most,
Right.
absolutely. So the sort of stats, broadly speaking, with us are that around 40% are instantly accepted, just there and there.
40. Wow, that's good.
And then another 20-odd% are accepted with one quick answer that we can give later on in the day, just swap of information. They said this, but we just want to ask this question. There's the answer. Okay, that's fine, go through. So broadly speaking, we'd say 2/3 go through and 1/3 goes into underwriting. And that's where they're slightly more complex or difficult to understand health issues. And it does depend on your age, of course. The older you are, the longer it generally takes, because you've generally got more health conditions. If the policy is a big one, it can take longer because they need to be a bit more careful with larger payouts, potential payouts. So it's sort of horses for courses, but a lot of people will get straight through. And it's not a complicated process. It's also a lot less expensive than people think. And also the other point to make is that a lot of people who have health conditions who think, well, I had depression for a long time, or I've got diabetes, or whatever the issue may be, they won't cover me. That's nonsense. We can get almost everybody covered one way or another. And I say almost because there are about 5% or so of people who come to us who we can't get covered. But
oh wow,
doesn't really matter your health conditions. We can find someone to cover you, generally speaking. We're experts at that. I mean, that's what we do. And so it's worth giving a go and seeing what's right for you.
Yeah, and just to, when you spoke about affordability, so I mean, obviously you can't base anything on me, but I can tell you what my quote was. So I'm 43. I am the right weight. I don't smoke. I drink occasionally. I exercise. And what was I think I was looking for £200,000 worth of cover over the length of my mortgage, so over for the next 25 years, because I've just had to extend my mortgage
Of
up
course,
to
yeah.
25 years. I think the quote came in at like £17 a month. It's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. That's £200,000 is quite a lot. And 25 years, that takes you, I won't do the maths for you, Lynn, but that takes you a fair way down life's path. Yeah. So yes, under 20 quid is a spending decision that I hesitate to say most people, but yeah, your listeners will mostly be able to take.
Yeah, and it's just the reassurance, isn't it, of just having that. I certainly find it very reassuring to have it, so that makes me feel good.
Lynn, I guess the life insurance is the one part of protection that most people have heard of and kind of get. It pays out when you die. But it is, for many people, cover they don't need because they don't have dependents.
Yeah.
And so people think, well, no one cares if I die financially. I mean, emotionally maybe, but not financially. It's not going to make a big dent in the world. So I won't buy life insurance. But the other type of policy that everyone should consider, if I can lurch on into my favorite subject, Lynn, if that's all right. The other type of policy everyone should consider is what I call disability insurance. Its name, its technical name is income protection, because that's what it does. It protects your income in the event of you being disabled and therefore unable to work.
Yeah.
So if you've got a job, or if you're a carer without a job, but caring duties in the home or beyond, then you can protect your standard of living in the event that catastrophe strikes. And you can no longer earn, whether it's an obvious thing like a car accident or something, or being run over, or nowadays more often bicycle accident. But no, it can just be mental illnesses, or in fact, most claims are caused either by mental conditions or spinal conditions, not by bike accidents or whatever. It's just the fact that our backs and our minds are immensely complex things, and when they go wrong, we can find ourselves, frankly, pretty useless. Sounds the wrong way to say that. I don't mean that at all. You know what I mean. I mean, unable to work and earn, and therefore in dire straits. And the problem with that is that catastrophe is that you're still there. When you're dead, you're dead. You don't cost anybody very much anymore, at least not after your funeral's been paid for. But when you're disabled, you need feeding. It's an ongoing challenge. So I don't mean to get gloomy about it, but basically I think everyone should consider the two catastrophes. The first catastrophe is the small chance, but it is there, that you'll be disabled during your working life and unable to earn for a period. It might be 6 months, it might be 12 months, it could be the rest of your life. And what do you do about that? Well, there's an insurance policy which will pay out and look after you. And it's there and worth considering. Everyone should consider that. And then if you have dependents, life insurance, absolutely. There is a third, critical illness cover, which pays out if you have a cancer or a stroke. But I would put that very much last in the pecking order of three, if you like. If you can afford the income protection and the life insurance, and you've got money to spare to protect yourself against catastrophe, which is a good thing to do, then a bit of critical illness cover would be sensible too.
Yeah. So
that's it in a nutshell, really, I think, Lynn.
That's a really good explanation. It's almost like you run a company doing it.
I've been doing it for 39 years.
Yeah. So I've got income protection insurance. But so I'm self-employed, and I have been self-employed so I run my own limited company, which I started in 2015. Okay. So I didn't know much about income protection insurance. I learned about it from our mutual friend, Pete Matthew.
Oh, yes.
From listening to his podcast. So thank you, Pete. And I sorted out my income protection insurance, and basically I am covered. So I've got emergency money in place, which will last me for, actually I've changed my mindset on emergency money. So I've always had 3 months cash set aside, but in January I had a bit of a disaster where I had to pay a really big tax bill, which cleared out my emergency money, and I had to borrow 5 grand from 2 friends.
Okay.
It was a really horrible tax bill.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about it. What it made me realize, and also I think, obviously we are recording this, it's day 80 of COVID today. It's day 80.
Is it really?
Day 80 of lockdown. I can't bloody believe it. But it's made me realize that 3 months emergency cash wasn't enough. So now I've got 6 months. So I've had a good few months, so I've been able to build up my reserves again.
That's right. That's good stuff. I'm hoping that the fact that we are all being forced to spend a lot less in lockdown, or rather we have less opportunities to blow it, having fun, might mean that, generally speaking, people have a bit more money than they used to have. Those that are in jobs, those are still in work, those who have been furloughed at near full pay. I hope there are going to be lots of examples of people who will find they have a bit of cash for the first time, or a bit more cash than they're used to having. And I really hope that those nest eggs, I suppose, get turned into that. It's not really rainy day money, it's catastrophe money.
Yeah.
I guess that's what rainy day money means, but it's not for saving up for a holiday. That's a different account. It's the fact that 6 months is a sensible. I mean, it's a lot of money for most people. It'll take some time to build up to that. But that is a sensible thing. And all these income protection policies, they don't pay out on day one when you've got a cold and can't go to work. They have what's called a deferment period. It just means you have to wait. Your illness has to be sufficiently bad, your disability has to be sufficiently bad to keep you off work for a month. 3 months is what I normally suggest, because that kind of makes it quite affordable. Then you've got 3 months of savings. That's the old logic. You could go out to 6 months, and actually then it doesn't cost very much at all. And I guess the way I always try and get people to think about this is not, do I need it? It's catastrophe insurance. You're actually spending whatever your budget allows, £20 to £40 a month. We sometimes say way less than a Sky subscription. Just protecting your bottom line, protecting the machine that makes all the money. Everything else, you insure your house and contents. Well, what about the thing that actually bought the house and contents? Your physical ability to work, your mental ability to work. So that's the kind of pitch I might use to get people to take it seriously.
Yeah, and again, just to give some context. So I'll just describe the policy I've got and how much it costs. So my policy is with the Exeter.
Yes.
So I've got a 3 month deferment period, which I might actually change to 6 months. Mental note, I'll speak to Otis about sorting that out. And I've got something like £2,000 a month in essential stuff covered. What else? That's about it, isn't it? And that costs me £29-30 a month. It's not, again, I always had this, I know about critical illness insurance because I've had people try to sell it to me several times in my life, and I've always said no to it, because when the quotes have come through, they've always been really, really expensive. And that's probably just because, the last time I got a quote was 10 years ago, when the insurance world was a very different place. Or maybe, it was.
No, it is more expensive cover. It is more expensive cover.
Right. Okay. And it was like £100 or something, though.
Yeah, that would be quite a big sum assured, a big potential payout. I guess just talking in terms of potential payout, your £2,000 a month payout, were you to be unable to work, and that I think would be in your own occupation. So while you could stack a shelf, maybe you can't do the job that earns you the money now. So it would pay out until you were able to do your own occupation. Certainly, Otis will check that for you when you talk to him and make sure that's the case. But I think it will be. Some of them are any occupation, and that's not good enough. That's not good enough. You've got to. Oh, that's the other thing. You have to buy protection properly. I'll get back to that and give me half a chance.
Yeah.
No, the payout of £2,000 is a payout a month, and that will probably run, Lynn, you might remember, to your 55th or 60th or 65th birthday.
It was my 60th.
Yes. So that's what we call full income protection. And that means that essentially it's up to your pension and the state pension. Well, the state pension starts later for you now than 60, but nonetheless, it's up to the pension then to take over the strain. Yeah. But you've got £2,000 a month, 24,000 a year for what's that? 17 years till you're 60. Don't mean to mention that. No, yeah. Sorry. 17 times 24. I can't do in my head, but it's a lot. And it's sort of what is 17 times 24? 10 times 74 would be 250. It's 240. So it's getting scarily close to £500,000 worth of potential benefit.
Yeah.
And people don't think of it that way. They go, well, £29 a month for 2,000 a month. That doesn't sound great odds. Well, no, it's not. It's £29 a month for a benefit that's up in the many hundreds of thousands potential payout. So, that's it's a really good value. And by extending it to 6 months, you would lower the cost. You may not need to. The other thing that you could do, and some people do, is bring it in and say, well, I can't afford that. I can take it out for a shorter time, 5 years or 10 years, and that gives me a breathing space. It's not full cover because you might need more than the breathing space, in which case you're just delaying hitting trouble. But it's still a lot better than nothing. So there are lots of ways to get the right amount of cover within your budget, and that brings me to my sort of another favorite bit of mine. If can I ramble on, Lynn?
Yeah, no, go for it.
People think you can go online and buy this stuff, and you can, or you can just look at a bit of clickbait advertising about how people in Maida Vale are stunned to find they can get some cheap insurance. Just don't be nuts. Don't be mad. Don't buy things from idiots, from liars. The way you need to buy protection or any financial services product is from someone who is regulated as an advisor by the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. And the reason for that is really simple. It's that if you take someone's advice in regulatory terms, and they say to you, I say to you, then the most suitable policy for you, Otis would say this to you, the most suitable policy for you is this income protection policy, which does this, this, and this, and this. And you say, okay, Otis, yeah, that's great. We've had a good chat. You understand my situation. That's fine. I'll do that. Thank you very much. If it turns out that Otis was wrong, or he made a mistake, or he just, didn't do the job properly, or told a lie, then when the, can I swear, when the shit hits the fan, and you or your beneficiaries are let down, then the financial ombudsman will review our advice, and they do. I mean, we protect literally thousands of families a week, every week.
Right.
And so over the 20 years we've been operating, mistakes have been made, and the ombudsman will review our advice and go, I'm sorry, the recorded call shows that Lynn said that, and you wrote that down.
Wow.
And therefore you made a mistake. And we pay. We have a professional indemnity insurance premium because we're professionals, and we pay. If you go to someone who isn't an advisor, then they've got no training in what's right and wrong. They're salespeople. They're not trained to give you the right advice. They're trained to make a sale. And B, they'll say, we don't give advice. And once they've said that, they can say whatever they like to you, persuade you to buy. And then when something goes wrong, you have no recourse to the ombudsman unless they actually defrauded you, which is not what happens. They just cut corners and then tell you stuff you ought to know. And arrange a policy that's slightly wrong. There's no comeback, is my point. You've got no. So anyone who buys a financial product without advice is taking a chance. If you do it online, you know what you're doing. You're buying and buying a level term assurance online. I would still say you need advice and you need to put it in trust and do other good things. But we work closely with major online brands and provide advice to their online trading and indeed do online trading ourselves. So I get that point. But once you're talking to someone, once they're verbally persuading you to do something, as in fact I'm doing now, really, you want to make damn sure that they're an advisor. Otherwise, you are riding for a fall.
Absolutely. And that is fundamentally, that's my favourite word for Corona times. Oh, fundamentally is the word I've used the most. It's why it's great to have a link from my business to yours, because when I write my content, so I recently wrote a piece for Lifesearch, but it wasn't sales, buy a life policy. It was, I want to tell you what happened to my mum. She died without a life insurance policy and a will. So I just want to tell you what happened to me. I don't want that to happen to you. If you're, I'm not telling you to do anything. What I'm saying is, in my experience and with my guidance, if you have dependents, if you have a mortgage, then you really should get a life insurance policy. I'm not telling you to do it, but if you want that life insurance policy, then go off to Lifesearch, because it's who I've used and I think they're great. Again, I'm not telling you to, I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, the point, whether it's Lifesearch or any other advisor, the point of using an advisor is that you have added protection for when things go wrong. And also, from my perspective, from the business perspective, if you're going to be talking to people all day, every day, and getting them to do what you think is right, well, then you're giving advice. And you need to take responsibility for that advice, because if you do enough of it, you will cock it up, you will make mistakes, and then people will be materially worse off. And you didn't mean to hurt them, you messed up. At that point, you've got to have the right insurance policies to cover your mistakes, and indeed, the financial stability to be able to pay people out within the excess of whatever those insurance policies may have. So, if you're going to buy a financial services product, particularly if it's protection, buy it from a regulated advisor. Don't make a fool of yourself with some smooth-talking salesperson, because there are plenty of them about.
Yeah. Gosh, and but the same applies to financial planning, doesn't it? Where and we've already mentioned our Pete, who is a financial planner. I've not quite got enough. Well, I manage my own money, but I'm quite capable of it. But if I ever have any little questions about my money, I do ask Pete, because we're both from Penzance. Like, how cool is that? Cool. He lives there now and I don't anymore. I lived there till I was 18, and you can literally see his house from my sister's attic window.
Okay. Well, I can go for another commonality, because we're all three from windswept peninsulas then, because I'm from the Cape of Good Hope. That's a windswept peninsula, a bit like Penzance, though I have to say it's a trifle warmer most of the year. Trifle warmer. But I only get to go there at Christmas now because I live here in London. But anyway, yes, you're right. Peter's a fine financial planner, and financial planning really kicks in when your finances, I think, get to a stage where you need to have a plan, other than just save and use your ISA allowances and those things. Then, but when you're actually, I don't know, 40s, 50s, that's when most people head off to a financial planner. When they, unless they're like you and enjoy doing it themselves, which rather oddly I never have. I use a lovely chap called Lee, and I taught him the trade back in the 90s, or the profession, I should say. And then when I sold my business, he moved on and set up his own. So
amazing.
Anyway,
but again, there's a difference, isn't there, between financial planners and financial advisors. And I'll be careful about what I say, because I don't want anybody to.
Oh, I won't be. I'll tell you what I think is the truth. I don't.
Go on then. Tell me.
I think financial advisors. I was one. Financial planning is an evolution of the financial advisory job.
Yeah.
So again, if you're a financial advisor, you give people good financial advice. If you're a wealth manager, you tend to deal with richer people and you give them good investment management advice. But a financial planner turns that on its head and gives life advice. So says, what's your plan? And if you've got a bit of money and you want to know when to stop work, how much money do you need to retire? How fast should you save while in work? All of that. Well, you have to start with a plan. And the plan has to start with, bluntly, when might you, realistically speaking, expect to die? So you could pick 110 and be bold, or you could pick 90, as I did, because I'm never going to make it that far. I've led far too full and, no, never mind, life. So pick 90. And then, okay, so what do you want to leave when you're 90? Naught? No problem. We'll get you back to naught. Or 100 grand to each of the kids, whatever your thing might be. So do you want the property to be mortgaged to the hilt by that stage? What do you want? So you work back from an end point to today. And then obviously it's not going to turn out like that. So every year you edit the plan, you change the plan, you inject another year's reality into the plan, and you shape it. That just means that regularly you can look at your life and go, I understand exactly what's going on end to end. I am on plan, or my plan needs to be changed a bit.
Or you're on, because I spoke to Pete a couple of weeks ago. We have a little one-to-one every sort of month. We just sort of, he helps me, I help him.
Podcasters Support Society? Is it the Podcasters Support Society?
Yeah, basically. And our last chat, we were talking about, oh my gosh, we were talking about theology. We were talking about the origins of economics. We were talking about my book, which is coming out on the 1st of August. We were talking about his book, which he published maybe 2 years ago. We just have these incredible conversations. But I suppose the point I'm trying to get to is financial planning and financial advisors know what the difference is between them and know what you want. I just think if I had a chunk of money, like let's say I inherited some money. I didn't inherit any money, but anyway, let's not go there. Let's pretend I inherited £200,000. Even now, actually, if I got that sort of money, I would just hand it over to Pete to sort out for me, because it's almost like what you've said. Like, I am an accountant, I'm a qualified accountant, but I don't do my own accounts. I have an accountant. So therefore, if I had a decent enough sum of money, I just don't at the moment. So. Yeah,
no, I agree. And I 200,000, that sounds about sort of entry level for financial planning. I don't know whether Pete would argue with me. It's been a fair old while, 2016, since I last called myself a financial planner.
Yeah.
While you're developing your wealth, you probably want to deal with people roughly your own age. So when you're saving or doing ISAs or whatever, if you can find a financial advisor these days at your sort of age, then that's not a bad thing to do, and just stick with them. I tell you what they'll do before they retire is become a financial planner. That'll be about the right age for you to need a financial planner, I guess. But then my brief is protection. But I wanted to know what your book is called. What's your book about?
So my book, I'm struggling with the title because I want it to be I want it to be really impactful. Like, that is an impactful book. Yeah. The colours. I mean, it's Liz Gilbert. It's an incredible book. So I don't know what the title is yet, but it's basically a book about it's a book about money, but it's also a memoir. So I'm just sort of it's in two parts. Part one is like short-term finance. So there's a chapter about budgeting, a chapter about debt. There's a chapter about money mindset psychology. There's a chapter about money saving for food. There's another chapter about money saving for family life. So that's part one, which I finished. I've sent it to my editor. 22,000 words I finished on Monday. So my editor is now, I'm so excited about this process. And then part two, which I need to start, and I need to have it written by the end of June, is more about your sort of stuff. So it's medium to long-term stuff. So we've got wills, pensions, investments, savings, insurance. That's pretty much it. There's a chapter on entrepreneurship because a lot of people eventually they get sick of the corporate world, and they want to go off and start their own business. So I want to have a chapter about that. And to be honest, this is a very honest conversation here. I'm now financially independent of anyone, which is such an incredible feeling. I mean, obviously I've got 3 children who it's the only reason it's the only reason I do what I do is for them and me, and my audience. But I'm trying to get my business to this incredible place where my business is my pension. Well, money comes from my business and goes into my pension. So I don't know where I want to end up sort of money wise. I've played around with Voyant, the financial planning software.
Yes.
So I do sort of know how much money I need to generate over the next sort of 10 years. But there's other things I want to do, like I want to change the world. Like I want to change the world for a better place, economically and financially, and things are moving there. So
then a couple of thoughts come to mind listening to that. The first is just make your first chapter about the long-term stuff. Make that about protection, because you've got to before you can fund your pension, before you can save and become whatever, you really should underpin the structure with some foundations. And there isn't a financial advisor or planner in the world that won't say protection is the cornerstone of any decent financial plan. But most people don't bother, or not most people bother with it, but it's not taken seriously enough. So make that your first chapter, even if it is the least exciting bit of it. I'll help you write it. The second bit, no, I've forgotten the second bit now. The second comment I was going to make, what was it?
Was it about my book not having a title? And don't worry about that.
No, it'll come.
It'll
come. And I like the division of the 2 elements, because there are times in your life when the short term is all you got, and there's no point looking longer term. You're living hand to mouth. But then when you can look longer term, that's the way to do it.
And I really like when I've spoken to publishers about this book, and I've decided to self-publish, because I'm not going to pay a publisher to reach an audience when I've already got that audience, basically. And I'm not letting anybody else own my content. It's mine. Control issues.
That's what I wanted to say. When you say your pension is your business, I think what you're starting to drive at there might be that you're building a readership, a listenership, an audience, and a reputation. And in time, that is worth money. There's revenue coming in, and so will someone one day buy that off you?
No.
You can retire, so that you retire fully. Because at 83, you ain't going to want to be doing what you're doing now. So the challenge of the entrepreneur is to build a business into a state where it is not so totally dependent on the one person, the one brand, the one thing that is you. That it actually someone can say, no, I could put someone else in there, use the same name, use the same format, do whatever I like, but I can put someone else in there and it would still have value to its audience, or its customer base, if you like to use a wider term. And that is a big part of entrepreneurial behavior, is how do you get from being enough to live off for one to actually either being enough to live off for more than one, or have something which is, what's the word, of value, even though you're not in it anymore. It's a big challenge.
Oh, I don't think I can comprehend that, because Mrs. Mummypenny is my 4th child.
Yes. So one day, Lynn, all your children will not really want to see you every day. They will they will be I'm here in lockdown with my 21-year-old and my 27-year-old, who are very happily busy at university and doing an acting job in Germany. But no, lockdown means they've got to come back. And so they're getting to see their parents every day, Lynn, and I can tell you It's tough on them. It's tough on them. So after a couple of decades, Miss Mummypenny might need to herself might need to move on and leave her baby in the hands of someone more youthful and energetic than you might be. Oh, I don't know. I'm in trouble. I'm in danger now. I'll shut up.
God, I do plan, but not that far ahead. That's interesting.
Well, you know what? The first thing you've got is a brand. It's a great name.
Yeah.
That name
Yeah.
is worth something. It may only be worth a dime without you, but that's a dime. Why do I use an American coinage phrase? I don't know. And then but so where do you go from there? You know, how do you build that? And
Yeah.
I guess I've done it twice, and it's a long, slow process. A sort of process of growing up, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm Mrs. Mummypenny is 7 years old this month.
Brilliant.
So and it started as a hobby. Like, literally, I was bored on maternity leave when my third son was born, because I knew, you know what you're doing by the time you've had 3 children.
True.
So I was like, what can I do? Oh yeah, I'll set up a website and Twitter and Facebook and go for it. And I literally went for it. And then I got redundancy, and EE gave me 40 grand in 2015. And no part of me was like, I'm going to overpay my mortgage.
No.
It was like all 40 grand went into paying the mortgage and my bills. From you know, for the sort of first 18 months when Mrs. Mummypenny earned approximately £2,000 a year.
Right.
But then I got into loads of debt because I was still living like this corporate life, even though I was self-employed and not earning any money.
Right.
Like, I went to Las Vegas and spent 5 grand. I bought a Prada handbag that cost another 1,000.
And people taking advice, Lynn, what are they doing? What are they thinking about?
Yeah, but
No,
I got
good. You've learned the lessons.
I got into 16 grand's worth of debt, and then it took me 2 years to pay off that debt, which I cleared in April of last year. And I wrote an article for the Financial Times about me having this 16 grand's worth of debt and how I paid it off in 2 years. And then I went on their podcast, and literally I went viral for paying off 16 grand's worth of debt. But the beauty about it is, and it's how I can write this book, is, and like the same way how you talk about stuff, like I've lived it, I've breathed it, I've literally like worried about how I was going to feed my children. I've, like, the next month I couldn't afford to pay the mortgage, and I've never had anybody else to rely on. I didn't have a husband that looked after me. Yeah, it's interesting. Right. Sorry, very meandering there. And I've just realised the time. Like, we could just talk for hours and hours and hours, but we can't, because we just can't.
We've got to give your audience a break.
Yeah. Right. So let's close off with, that was really the most fascinating conversation. I knew that it would be a great conversation because
Thank you.
I've listened to work you've done before, and you're very good at breathing life into an industry that needs that, because it's too old-fashioned and red tape based and male, and I mean, I know you're a man, but
well, apart from that fatal flaw, yes, come to Lifesearch. We cut through all of that, and you speak to, well, Otis is a man too, but you speak to wonderful people,
yeah,
and many of whom are female, and real diversity amongst our advisor force and our whole team, and they will make it entertaining. If you look at our Trustpilot feed, you'll see lots of people who say that they didn't realize it could be that interesting or that much fun or that easy to sort it all out. It's just a question of going to the right place, and well, obviously I think Lifesearch is the right place, but hey, we aren't alone out there.
No, but, well, I think Lifesearch is the best place as well. So there you go. Great minds think alike. So I've in this conversation, I referenced the article I wrote, which is, it's called something like The Importance of Life Insurance, where I reference the story of my mum. So I'll put a link to that, because what my readers can do is, I really do urge people to go and read that article. just to see the importance of life insurance. Obviously, we've talked about it here, but then there's a link in there which will send you straight over to a special landing page on your website. So you will then know that that person has come from my website to yours.
Absolutely, that's how it works. Yeah.
So that's it.
We will look after them as very best we can. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you will indeed, as you have looked after me as a customer. So yeah, thank you so much. That was a really, really good conversation.
Well, it's fascinating, Lynn. We've not spoken like this before, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, like we've never met before. Yeah, it was. Hopefully, we'll meet in real life.
One day. Absolutely.
One day. Right, I'm going to stop recording, but stay there. Let's